to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. Israeli forces press deeper into northern Gaza, with tanks reportedly surrounding the Indonesian hospital as negotiators eye a 5-day truce to allow the release of dozens of Hamas hostages. Tonight, President Biden expressed optimism that the release of the hostages held by Hamas would not be far off. Meanwhile, in a video they released, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels claim to have seized the Israel-linked cargo vessel, the Galaxy Leader. The capture of the ship and its 25 international crew members occurred just days after the Houthis issued a threat to target Israeli shipping in response to the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. The crew were reportedly under investigation by the Houthis, and they include Ukrainians, Bulgarians, Filipinos, Mexicans, and a Romanian, according to Israeli and Romanian officials. And President Marcos Jr. has reaffirmed his country's unwavering stance on territorial integrity in the South China Sea. Speaking at a forum in Hawaii, Marcos vowed not to cede a single square inch of our territory amid China's growing assertiveness in the region. Tonight, President Biden expressed optimism that the release of the hostages held by Hamas would not be far off.
Mr. President, is a hostage deal near? Sir, is a hostage deal near? Mr. President, is a hostage deal near? I believe so, but I'm not prepared to talk. You believe so? Yes. Thank you. How soon?
There may be a compromise to free at least some of the hostages. Now, 45 days into the war that broke out following the terror strikes on Israel by Hamas, provided that there is a halt in combat or fighting, according to people acquainted with the negotiations. Nonetheless, since their terror act on October 7, Hamas has refused to free its hostages, including a 3-year-old American girl and a 10-month-old baby. Negotiations might still fail, but insiders indicated a solution would involve the hostages being exchanged for a break in hostilities.
It is clear beyond doubt that the time is working not in our favor, and we have to get the hostages back to Israel as soon as possible. We can't wait. Right now, we know there's a deal on the table, and it's being delayed because we're trying to get a better deal. There is no time. There's no time for the children. There's no time for the infants, for the injured, for the chronically ill, for the elderly. There is no time. If there is a deal, they must be back home now, immediately, even if not everybody comes back.
Attending a press conference at the Israeli embassy are families of Israelis who have been kidnapped by Hamas in Gaza.
The children must come back home first. The young children, with the mothers. If they free the children, we must say yes, yes, of course. Everybody that they will let go, come. Even that it's very painful, but I think there is the only way, that they will free by steps, not all together. I don't believe that they will let everybody's coming.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Meantime, we don't know about any deal. We get a close contact with the army, and in Israel they inform us if anything happens, but nothing is happening. We don't know nothing.
But there was no such pause today as another hospital, this time in northern Gaza, was reportedly struck. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry said there are fatalities after the Indonesian hospital was shelled, a claim denied by the Israeli military. But Israel today showing new release video to reinforce its claim that hospitals are being used as cover by Hamas. Meanwhile, in a video they released, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels claim to have seized the Israel-linked cargo vessel, the Galaxy Leader. The capture of the ship and its 25 international crew members occurred just days after the Houthis issued a threat to target Israeli shipping in response to the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. The footage showed masked armed men jumping onto the ship from a helicopter while the vessel was still moving and holding crew members at gunpoint. Palestinian and Yemeni flags were raised on board. AFP could not independently verify the authenticity of the footage. The vessel headed from Turkey to India was rerouted to the Yemeni port of Salif Port in Hodeidah province, according to the maritime security company Ambri. Ambri said the owner of the Galaxy Leader, which transports cars and other vehicles, is listed as Britain's Raycar Carriers, whose parent company belongs to Israeli businessman Unger. Now, the crew were reportedly under investigation by the Houthis, according to Ambri. They include Ukrainians, Bulgarians, Filipinos, Mexicans, and a Romanian, according to Israeli and Romanian officials. Nippon Yusen, also known as NYK Line of Japan, said it had set up a task team to gather information and ensure the crew's safety. Iran on Monday, meanwhile, dismissed as invalid Israel's accusations that Yemen's Houthi rebels were acting on Tehran's guidance when they seized the Red Sea ship owned by the Israeli businessman. The U.S. has already sent 2 aircraft carrier groups to the eastern Mediterranean as part of efforts, it says, aimed to deter a wider war. Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi has said Iran sees it as its duty to support the resistance groups, but insisted they are independent in their opinion, decision, and action. A rickety wooden boat carrying Rohingya refugees has reached the shores of western Indonesia, marking the latest wave of arrivals in the region. The boat, carrying 256 Rohingya who had been at sea for weeks, was initially prevented from landing by local communities. However, after several desperate pleas from the men, it was finally allowed to reach the shore on Sunday. Roughly 800 Rohingya have arrived in Indonesia's Aceh province in at least 5 vessels over the past week.
বাংলাদেশের মধ্যে তো আরা রেশন অতি হানা খাদ্য হইতে ইহতি বাংলাদেশ সরকারের সুন্দরগুলো দিয়ে দিবাদি আরা জানার সিকিউরিটি নেই হ্যাঁ আল্লাহ বলি আরা ইন্দোনেশিয়া হরিয়ান মুসলমান রাষ্ট্র হ্যাঁ আল্লাহ বলি আরা এটা বাড়াবিলি হয়ে দেশি আর অবশ্যই মধ্যে মরে যাইবে বাসের মরে যাইবে দিয়েও জানার আশানো আসিল মরে যাইলে যাইতে পারি বাঁচলে বাঁচিতে পারি
Now, this latest influx comes as the region's stormy season draws to a close, allowing boats to make the perilous journey from Bangladesh. More than 1 million Rohingya have fled Myanmar since the 1990s, most in the wake of a 2017 military crackdown that's now subject to a UN genocide investigation. The majority of them have settled in camps in Bangladesh. However, many have also sought to travel more than 4,000 kilometers to Malaysia, fueling a multi-million-dollar human smuggling operation that often involves stopovers in Indonesia. Over 100,000 Rohingya now live in Muslim-majority Malaysia. The international community has called on Myanmar to address the root causes of the Rohingya refugee crisis and to create conditions for their safe return home. North Korea has defied warnings from South Korea and the United Nations and announced plans to launch a satellite as early as Wednesday. Now, this marks the third attempt by North Korea this year to put a military reconnaissance satellite into orbit. The Japanese Coast Guard posted a notification on its website on Tuesday of a launch window between November 22 and December 1. Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio has instructed government ministries and agencies to prepare for the launch and has called on North Korea to cancel it. He has also coordinated with South Korea and the U.S. U.S. to respond to the situation. South Korea's defense minister has warned North Korea to halt its preparations for the launch and has threatened to take necessary measures to protect its people. The UN Security Council has adopted many resolutions calling on North Korea to halt its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Analysts say that successfully putting a spy satellite into orbit would improve North Korea's intelligence gathering capabilities and provide crucial data in any military conflict. North Korea has conducted a record number of weapons tests this year, ignoring warnings from the U.S., South Korea, and their allies.
And now here we are in this increased rhetoric about threatening South Korea. A reminder ultimately of what this program has always been about. The nuclear missile program in North Korea is designed to establish dominance over South Korea, to enable more robust, aggressive, and from Kim's perspective, hopefully fruitful, coercive diplomacy toward South Korea. As we move on, we are going to see more and more what this nuclear capability entails in terms of Kim's willingness to act more aggressively, particularly in terms of whether he moves at some point to more aggressive, lethal, kinetic actions. And then you layer on top of this the recent cooperation with Russia. At a certain level, North Korea wants to portray a transforming world order, of course, that is conducive to countries like North Korea exercising their sovereign right to do whatever it is they want to do, free from the fetters of international norms and standards, without concern about increased pressure or sanctions. And you know that all the pressure on North Korea, all the denial of its legitimate right to secure a nuclear weapons program, a missile program, comes from an unfair, unjust, U.S.-led Western world order, which is now collapsing. And this new world order is emerging. This new world order will be more conducive to North Korea, will not pivot to sanctions for every bad action, will not lecture them on human rights, will not even be particularly concerned about cyber and other illicit activities. And this is all the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that this alliance, this relationship, it's not an alliance, this relationship between Russia and North Korea goes to the next level, where Russia actively seeks to improve the military capabilities. An excellent piece that Victor and Ellen just ran, I think it's posted now in Beyond Parallel, right? Really examines this, a good overview of what would be the implications of active Russian support to the nuclear program, to the missile program, to the reconnaissance satellite program, and also, I think, in the conventional domain. You know, this is a KPA. It's large, quantity has a quality all of its own, but it does face a lot of shortfalls in terms of resources and a lack of modernization of systems across ground, air, naval domains. And if they have a willing partner with Russia helping them to bring some of their conventional forces up to date, we can never forget that too would also increase the threat posed by North Korea's nuclear program, because they would feel more confident in sustaining whatever our response might be. So
U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping recently met on the sidelines of the APEC summit in San Francisco. Now, this highly anticipated meeting took place amid heightened tensions between the two countries. To discuss the significance of this meeting and what it means for U.S.-China relations is Mr. Dennis Wilder, a senior fellow for the Initiative for U.S.-China Dialogue on Global Issues at Georgetown University. Let's listen in.
The world is big enough for both of us. Now, he used to say the Pacific is big enough for both of us. And to say the world is big enough suggests that China's view of itself is changing rapidly, that it's a world power. And it almost referred back to this idea of the G2, that, you know, the idea that the United States and China as the two leading powers in the world will kind of divide up the world and our responsibilities. Of course, this is something we've rejected on the American side out of hand, but it's kind of interesting that he drifted back in that direction. What he doesn't like is the continued reference on the United States side to intense competition. The Chinese hate this. Even though they know we're in intense competition, they don't want to admit it. And it's partially because they don't see intense competition as we do. I think Americans see intense competition as very positive in our society. You know, we see it as making you better. Intense competition on football field makes you better. But certainly on Taiwan, probably the Chinese were disappointed in where Biden was. Not that he moved away from the one China policy, he just didn't give them as much as they were hoping for as a firewall against what might happen in Taiwan in the Taiwan election. So I think the Chinese are going to go away a little nervous on the subject of Taiwan.
Meanwhile, Mr. Wilder was also asked about President Biden recently making a comment referring to President Xi Jinping as a dictator. Here are his thoughts on this statement. Take a listen.
You know, Biden definitely has feelings about China that are quite negative. And I think that one thing I didn't say earlier is this trust deficit on both sides. We don't trust them. They say they're peace loving, and then they do what they do around Taiwan. We say we're not decoupling, and then we talk about supply chains, limiting technology, you know, the rest of it. And so I've never seen the trust level between the United States and China as low as it is today. There's no trust left in this relationship right now.
Now, President Marcos Jr. has expressed the Philippines' intent to draw from the U.S.'s experience in crafting its own policy on artificial intelligence. The president stated his desire to study the U.S. approach laid out in an executive order signed by President Joe Biden last month, which outlines guidelines to balance the needs of AI developers with national security and consumer rights.
I've just received the news that there has been within the AI community this conflict as to whether or how far to push it without regulation. I know President Biden has just signed a document that says that this must be regulated, monitored, and regulated properly, because we have seen the rather more sinister uses of artificial technology. On the other hand, we must always remember it is a double-edged sword, and it can swing in a way that will help us. And I think if we are trying to transform our economy in the Philippines, as we all are, as a matter of fact, after COVID, in the face of Ukraine, and now in the Middle East, we have tried to bring these new technologies into the fore. But once again, we have to be more cognizant of what are the risks involved. And the reason that it is so difficult is because these things never existed before in human history. And we are making this up as we go along, as it were. And there are very many unintended consequences to something quite so powerful.
AI presents both opportunities and challenges. On the other hand, it has the potential to boost labor productivity and drive economic growth. However, there are also concerns about potential biases in AI algorithms, implications for privacy and security, and potential job displacements.
And so we continue to look to the United States and to technology leaders like the United States to provide the guidance and to the lessons, rather, that you have learned being at the forefront, and both the good lessons and the lessons that were not quite as successful. That so long as we are aware that there is a possible danger and we think things through properly, then we will be able to take full advantage of AI and of other new technologies. On the other hand, if we sit back and just let it take over our lives, that is exactly what it will do. It will take over our lives.
And fresh from his participation in the 30th Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Economic Leaders Meeting in San Francisco, the president embarked on his first official visit to Los Angeles as head of state on November 18. Let's take a look back. Our LA correspondent, Alan Basiliejo, was on the scene to capture the excitement and buzz among the Filipino community as they eagerly awaited the arrival of their president. Take a look.
Los Angeles, California plays host to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. after wrapping up his participation in the 30th APEC Summit in San Francisco, California. Just as it was in the northern reaches of the state, Filipinos in Southern California extended a warm reception for the president. And on the part of Marcos, the Philippine leader delivered an inspired address to an estimated 1,200 listeners and shared his thoughts as they pertained to the thriving Filipino diaspora in Los Angeles.
Pass on your love of the Philippines to the next generation and the generations after that. The Hisoy home is where the heart is. And when they love their Filipino identity, as you do, they will always belong to the Philippines, no matter where they might be.
I think it's but proper and right for the president to come here because you will find in America the biggest Filipino diaspora. And this Filipino diaspora, they continue to remain rooted to their Filipino heritage. And what better way to really encourage them to do more in nation building than to have the president really come here to personally make the appeal so that Filipinos will continue supporting our country.
The Filipino American Chambers is focusing on businesses, and there's always a synergy with what the Philippine government is doing and, our U.S. counterparts here as being the chamber. We always have our love for our homeland, and if there's any trade that we can contribute, business, and then synergy with that would be great for us. So we're excited to hear what his message are and, help our kababayans and vice versa here for all of the immigrants here in the U.S. as well.
What message would you like to give to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.?
That he has to continue his good job right now that he has started. So we will have a more progressive country. We wish him good health and his family so he can continue his work for us.
After engaging with members of the community, Marcos departed, bound for Honolulu, Hawaii, the third and last leg of his week-long U.S. trip. By most accounts, President Marcos Jr.'s stopover here in Los Angeles was a short one. But be that as it may, many were nonetheless happy to hear the president's message, one which he carried with him all the way from their homeland. Alan Basiliejo, Los Angeles, California. Eagle News, we live in extraordinary times.
Miss Universe 2023 was recently crowned in El Salvador on November 18th. Our Net25 Hollywood correspondent, MJ Racario, was on the scene to meet the newly crowned Miss Universe, Shaynes Palacios Cornejo from Nicaragua. Take a look.
Hola, El Salvador, MJ Racario here. I was able to meet the new Miss Universe, Shaynes Palacios from Nicaragua. And we were able to meet her at the Miss Universe Media Center in San Salvador, El Salvador. Let's find out what she has to say. Take a look.
Es un placer para mí presentarme. Soy Shaynes Alondra Palacios Cornejo. Tengo la edad de 23 años. Soy licenciada en comunicación y soy Miss Universe 2023. I'm the new Miss Universe. Nací en la hermosa tierra de lagos y volcanes, Nicaragua. I was born in the beautiful land of lakes and volcanoes, Nicaragua. Es la primera vez que sucede esto en mi país. Es un hecho histórico. Solo quiero decirle gracias a cada uno de ustedes por hacer este sueño realidad. This is the very first time that this happens in my country. It's a historic event. I just want to thank all of you to make this dream come true. Estoy abierta a sus preguntas. Sé que deben de ser muchas y estoy feliz de poder decir que soy la primera mujer en ser Miss Universo en Nicaragua. I know there must be a lot of questions. I will take your questions. I'm just very happy to say I'm very proud to be the very first Miss Nicaragua, Miss Universe. Nicaragua, who do you dedicate this crown to?
Esta corona, como lo escribí en el post en Instagram antes de salir al escenario, está dedicada a las niñas de todo el mundo y a mi niña interior. Con ello, también a mi familia y a los más de 6 millones de habitantes de mi país.
As I mentioned on my Instagram post, I dedicate this crown to all the little girls out there and also my inner little girl and all of the residents of my country.
That is it for entertainment news. I'm Jay Ricardo here. Always tune in to Net 25 because we live in extraordinary times.
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news for we live in extraordinary times. Good night.